Hey, it's Nick Kemp here with the Ikigai Podcast. And on this episode, episode 58, I welcome back author and sustainable life coach, Sachiaki Takamiya. Sachiaki is the author of The Ikigai Diet and more recently, Ikigai Biohacking based on natural Japanese health. Sachiaki, you joined me on episode 3 of this podcast to discuss what Ikigai means to Japanese people. And also, you gave a presentation at the Ikigai Summit, which I hosted in February. And you've hosted several webinars with my Ikigai Tribe community. So it's really great to have you back.
Oh, thank you for having me back. Yeah, I'm very happy to be back.
Me too. And I thought the Ikigai Summit was a great success. And you participated also in the panel discussion. And you actually also helped me doing some interpretation when we had Professor Akihiro Hasegawa. So thank you for everything that you've done for me. I really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. Not at all. I mean, I really enjoyed the summit. Yeah, it was very interesting to hear other speakers, talk about Ikigai too.
Yeah, it was a great success. So maybe we'll try and do that every year. So I'll definitely invite you back to be a part of that as well.
Oh, that would be great.
Awesome. So this will be a part 1 of a double episode we are going to do on Ikigai biohacking. And yeah, I'm really enjoying your book and learning a lot. So we should mention that you live in Shiga Prefecture, which is one of the longest lived prefectures in Japan. And you lead this traditional Japanese natural lifestyle that you wrote about in your previous book, but also in your new book. And your previous book, The Ikigai Diet, was more focused on eating for longevity and Ikigai and well-being. And now your most recent book, Ikigai Biohacking, focuses on obviously biohacking to live longer and optimally. And at the start of the book, you ask 2 important questions to the reader. Why do you want to live long? And what is the purpose of extending your life span? So I'd like to ask these questions of you, Sachiaki. You are in your 60s or early 60s, but you look much
just exactly 60 years old.
Okay, sorry. Better get that correct. So you are 60. You look much younger, and I'm sure you feel much younger. So why do you want to live longer, and what is the purpose for you extending your lifespan?
Well, first of all, I'm not interested in extending my lifespan. I'm happy with the present lifespan we have as a humanity, which is somewhere between 100 and 120. Yeah. So the longest person who has lived before was 121, I think a French woman. And now I think there's a Brazilian man or someone who's reached 121 or something. So we know that humans are capable of living up to 120, around that sort of age. So I'm happy to stay within this kind of a natural capacity we have. But I want to stay healthy. I want to stay sick-free and be active and, to be able to continue doing what I am doing now at the age of 100 and 110 and so on. Yeah, so I am not interested in extending my lifespan to 150 or 200 years old or so much. Yeah, because the purpose of so staying sick-free until 120 is, so yeah, I want to complete my mission in life. Yeah, and I kind of started late. I've been a sort of a student for a long time in my life, in a way. I mean, not a literal sense of a student, but I have not accomplished what I wanted to do enough in the last 60 years. I think some people are lucky enough to be established early on, so they maybe fulfilled their mission by the time they are 40 or 50 and so on. But in my case, my life is kind of starting now. I'm kind of having those 2 books out, and so I'm sure in the future, in the next few years, I'll be speaking worldwide, maybe, giving talks or writing more books. And so maybe I can spread the Ikigai diet and Ikigai biohacking. So this contribution kind of begin now. So having extra 60 years is very helpful for me. Yeah, so that's the main purpose. And I want to stay sick free and stay energetic to be able to continue my work. Yeah. And why 120? Well, maybe 100 is enough for me too. If I can live another 40 years, that's fine with me. But just because we're capable of living up to 120, like why not? It's just like something I want to challenge.
Well, all this resonates with me. Like you, I feel my life has only just begun in some ways. I think the work I do now is my personal mission, and I really only started a few years ago. So life started at 50 for me. So I understand that perspective, and to have this personal mission that's intrinsically motivating and meaningful and something you'd happily do for another 20, 30, 40 years, I can relate to. And as you touched on, this idea of living sick-free to, 90, 100, maybe even 110, I really think makes sense. And that's the strong message in your book. And I think it highlights an important issue today that many people in their later years, they need medication, they have mobility issues, and probably struggle to enjoy daily life. This was certainly the case with my father, and I think the last 5 years he had quite a few health problems, needed medication, and had mobility issues to the point where he actually fell over twice and broke both his hips. And that really impacted his later years. So this resonates a lot with me, and I've been focusing a lot on my mobility the last 6 months to a year. So I can relate to what you're saying, and I think it makes sense. We should try and live sick-free and a little bit older, but we don't want to be trying to live to 150 and not have a high quality of life, lifestyle. So going deeper, in your book, you touch on 3 types of health that you relate to biohacking. So what are they?
Yeah, so these are personal health and planetary health and spiritual health, right? So one difference between Ikigai biohacking and regular biohacking is that we kind of include the spiritual aspect of our life. Yeah. So when you start thinking about spiritual aspect, the death is not the end of everything. Yeah, depending on your belief, you have a different. Maybe you might believe in reincarnation, or you might have a Christian belief of going to heaven after dying and so on. But whatever the belief you have, if you believe in some form of life after death, and then your focus is not only just extending your lifespan and trying to live as long as you can, and your focus is not only the physical body, the spiritual side as well. So from that point of view, maybe you don't have to live to 150 because you have a next life to transform into. But while you are alive on this earth, you want to kind of accomplish your life mission. Therefore, the quality of life is more important than the length of life. Yeah. But then if we think about personal physical health and spiritual health, maybe we are doing slightly different things. For example, we talk about fasting or diet or exercises and so on, but things can be slightly different if you're aiming for spiritual health as well. Yeah. And the planetary health, because if the planet is in a healthy state, there's no point of doing all those things to extend to improve your health condition, because you cannot survive without the earth. Yeah. So for me, personal health and planetary health should be tackled together. They are kind of two the same thing. And then again, if you are thinking about the planetary health, the type of activity you do changes a little. Yeah, there are many activities which can benefit just for your physical health, but may not be good for planetary health. But there are activities which can help both for the planetary health and the personal physical health.
Yeah, I really like this approach, and it's kind of it's not a self-centric or selfish way of thinking about your own life, that you're including this spiritual aspect. And even if you're not religious, you just don't know. You don't know what happens after death. And I guess from living in Japan and observing how Japanese handle the death of relatives and their cultural practices, Japanese seem to accept death and don't seem to perhaps fear it. Whereas in the West, we have this probably mentality of, oh yeah, I don't want to die and I want to get everything done before I die. And we have this different perspective. And then this idea of planetary health, I think is really important. And we obviously can relate that to, our connection with nature and how we treat nature and look for sustainable ways that you discuss for exercise, diet, and lifestyle. And another thing that came to mind is, I think when we talk about biohacking, you have this image of people doing all these tests and tracking their blood and buying the latest technology to make sure they're not aging or improving their overall health. And it can become quite expensive. And I think what you're offering is very affordable. So we don't have to be spending thousands of dollars trying to biohack ourselves when we can do it almost at no cost, just with healthy diet choices, certain types of exercise, and considering both our spiritual and I guess the planetary life that or the planetary world that we live in. And so, yeah, it's a very holistic approach that goes beyond just your diet and exercise. And you describe it as a natural approach rather than, I guess, an artificial approach. And you touch on the shizenha. So what does that word mean, shizenha?
Yeah, shizenha means naturalist. Shizen means nature. Ha is like a sort of a direction. So like a shizenha means like a naturalist. Yeah, people who value natural way of living. Shizenha people. Yeah. So shizenha biohacking is kind of a natural. Yeah, it is a naturalist biohacking. So we apply a mainly natural method, but don't focus on the artificial measures.
And this would be specifically a Japanese approach to being a naturalist.
I think there are naturalists in other countries too. Yeah, but shizenha is a sort of Japanese word, and then there are naturalists in Japan too. And then so I'm kind of modeling those Japanese naturalists for this biohacking, and because they are the successors of centenarians in Japan, so they pretty much lead similar lifestyle to the Japanese centenarians. Yeah, but centenarians lived a long time ago, so some of their lifestyles are a little, it's difficult for modern people to, copy, while those Shizenha people are young and they live in the present era in this, 2023. So it is easier to model their lifestyle than the lifestyles of centenarians.
I see. Well, that makes sense. And so one of the things you mentioned earlier and a strong theme in your book is intermittent fasting. And a lot of people now practice this for the various health benefits. I do as well at the moment. So I usually skip breakfast and don't eat until after midday. And you write that intermittent fasting is one of the most effective ways to activate autophagy, which is considered to stop or slow down the aging process. So what is autophagy and why is it important?
Right. So autophagy is a kind of a function, like a cellular kind of function to regenerate or repair itself. Autophagy means self-eating, but it basically eats the kind of decayed cell to renew. Yeah. And then we all have this function when you are young, but once we get old, this function deteriorates, and then we need to constantly activate this function to sustain this mechanism. Yeah. And then this was actually the autophagy itself was not discovered, but the function of the autophagy was made famous by a Japanese scholar called Yoshinori Osumi, who won the Nobel Prize in 2016 in the field of physiology and medicine. And then it became very famous worldwide. And it is one of the key words in the field of longevity. Yeah, health and longevity. Yeah, autophagy. Once you can activate autophagy, you can slow down aging a lot. That's what it is said.
I see. So it almost sounds like this process of recycling damaged cells or optimizing damaged cells so they can be used to help other cells grow or activate. Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm not surprised a Japanese researcher discovered that. Japanese do love to research. And so the type of fasting you practice, you call hare and care intermittent fasting. So would you like to explain what that is?
Yeah. So hare and care intermittent fasting is the fasting that I practice. So I practice fasting only during the week, which is 5 days a week. But on the weekend, I take a break. I just eat 3 meals a day. So I don't do fasting. Yeah. So this comes from the concept called hare and care. It's a Japanese concept. Hare means festivals or celebrations or kind of not a usual time, like a special time, while K is a usual time. Yeah. And so in Japan, we distinction between K and Hare. And during the K period, we just lead a very simple lifestyle. We eat simple food, and it's more like sort of disciplined sort of period. While Hare, we just celebrate. We enjoy our life. So we have a feast, and we kind of use a different kind of plates, and we maybe dress up, nicely to celebrate the moment. So I put those two into a weekly schedule. So make during the week to be care, where we kind of discipline ourselves more by practicing intermittent fasting or maybe staying on a plant-based diet as much as possible. But on the weekend, making it hare period, the time of celebration, to include some animal-based food if you like, or just eat 3 meals. So making this distinction kind of create a balance in our life. And also it makes so much easier to practice intermittent fasting because a lot of people practice intermittent fasting every single day. Mm-hmm. If they do 16 hours fast, they maybe stop eating at 8 p.m. and then they won't eat until noon the next day. But if you do that every single day, that means after 8, you cannot eat anything, not even snacks, and you cannot drink anything either. I mean, not alcohol. Yeah, you can only drink water or black coffee or something, but not alcohol or even fruit juice. Yeah, which is quite difficult. You have to do it every single day. But if you have the weekend to make an exception, then maybe you can drink wine late at night on the weekend. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, actually, I noted how you also discussed the social benefit of doing that. So on the weekends, I think sometimes you make pancakes for your son and have breakfast together. And that's obviously a special time. And you're probably talking to your son and engaging in, important conversations or just fun conversations. So I like that idea. And I also like the terminology. I think in the West, when people talk about this, they call them cheat days, almost hinting that it's something negative or something bad when you take a cheat day and you kind of overdo it and almost eat anything and go crazy. But this is a more kind of civilized, common sense approach. Like on the weekend, just enjoy yourself, have 3 meals a day, maybe have a drink here and there, and you can also enjoy that social aspect. So I might embrace this because it's a bit hard now with my family because my wife works weekends and my son is out and about, or sometimes he doesn't want to have breakfast, but I can still go with my friends or do other things. So this is a really positive approach. And would you like to also touch on the benefits of this type of fasting where you're fasting 5 days a week?
Right.
but you're also allowing yourself to eat a little bit more and maybe drink 2 days a week.
Yeah. So I already mentioned about autophagy, the cellular recycling function. It is very critical, but we also have something called mTOR, which is the opposite of autophagy. mTOR is kind of responsible for growth. Yeah. So not everybody should activate autophagy. For example, children needs to activate mTOR, or children or any people who are growing. That includes some young people, young athletes who need the kind of a growing power, then they need to activate mTOR too. Yeah. And usually for older people, like people who are over 50, yeah, need to start thinking about longevity, and autophagy helps tremendously for our longevity. Yeah. Therefore, a lot of people who are over 50 need to activate autophagy a lot. Yeah. But not constantly. So there are some period when autophagy needs to be activated, but there are some periods that mTOR need to be activated too. The balance is important. And then the person called James Clement, who is the author of the book called The Switch. Yeah, he talks about this kind of a cycling of autophagy activating period and mTOR activating period. And he says about 66% of the time should be autophagy activating period, and 34% is mTOR activating period. Yeah. And then there's another person called Dr. Mindy Peltz, who has a YouTube channel specialized on fasting. She gives tons of videos on intermittent fasting, and she says 80% should be on autophagy and 20% should be on mTOR. Yeah. And then if you practice high and K intermittent fasting, the ratio is about 71% autophagy and 29% mTOR. So during the week, the K period is the autophagy activating period, but Hare period, the weekend, is mTOR activating period. Therefore, we have 3 meals, plus we include animal-based food, which has a higher protein. Yeah, which gives us a higher protein intake, which can activate mTOR more.
I like this approach. And you also touch on that having a cycle of pain and recovery is, the paramount key to longevity. And this is kind of like a universal law. I think if we want to grow physically and build muscle, for example, we've got to put stress on our muscles and then allow them to recover and grow, and then we grow muscle. Even mentally, if we go through challenges, we learn things about ourselves and perhaps mature and gain some sort of wisdom. And I guess if we fast, that's the type of pain we have to handle the cravings and ignore them and get over that discomfort. So the old adage, no pain, no gain is true. And yeah, you do mention that in your book. So would you like to add anything to that idea of, why pain is helpful?
Yeah, right. So there is a man called Yu Suzuki, the Japanese man, and he is the author of a book called Furo Choju Method, which means method for immortality and longevity. Yeah, it is a bestseller book in Japan, and he went over 3,000 research data on longevity, and then he just found a commonality of it, which is to have this cycle of pain and recovery. Yeah. So I think intermittent fasting has a pain and recovery cycle, because during your fasting window, it is a pain period, but during your eating window, it is a recovery period. Yeah. But with Hare and K intermittent fasting, we are making another cycle during the week and the weekend. So during the week, the K period is more like a pain period, but the weekend, Hare period is the recovery period. Yeah. And then having this a bigger recovery period makes a lot of difference. Because if you practice intermittent fasting every day, you have maybe 8 hours eating window, which is fine, But as I told you before, after 8 o'clock, you cannot drink anything and stuff like that. So you still a kind of a disciplined. Yeah.
Yes.
But having the weekend, it's much longer time to just relax and let go. So when you come back on Monday, you feel much more energized to, do your, practice.
It's almost, it touches on that aspect of Ikigai when you have something to look forward to. So if you have certain foods you plan to eat, or you decide to go out with friends on the weekend, you have that to look forward to, which kind of makes you feel good in the moment anyway. And we don't want to be eating meat or drinking in excess. And it's a very manageable, disciplined approach. And there are some people who kind of go to these extremes, and somehow they can just follow a routine and be very strict about it. But one would think you're maybe missing out on, certain benefits of letting yourself go and enjoying food you like, and socializing over a meal.
Yeah. And also for the animal-based food, by limiting the animal-based food only on the weekend, you can afford more expensive meat, such as, grass-fed beef or free-range chicken and so on. While if you eat meat every day, then you kind of look for sort of cheap option and so on. Then those are like factory farmed, meat. So by this system, you can choose a healthier animal product because you're, eating less.
Well, on that theme of healthy foods, you've identified some autophagy activating foods you recommend consuming, and you wrote about this in your book. So would you like to offer some examples and the benefits of eating them?
Yeah. So there are, so usually autophagy is activated by intermittent fasting or exercises or, deliberate heat exposure or cold exposure. But there are some foods which can activate autophagy too, which are foods like coffee, green tea, natto, miso, broccoli, olive oil, ginger, and there are quite a few of them. Yeah. And then among those, I think coffee and green teas are the most critical because you can consume them during your fasting window. Yeah. So when you practice intermittent fasting, only beverages you can drink are non-caloric beverages. So water or black coffee or green tea without putting any sugar or milk or anything. Yeah. And so when you intake coffee or green tea during your fast, then that can kind of prolong your autophagy activating period. Yeah. But other food, basically you're eating. So when you eat, you break your fast. So it probably doesn't have as strong effect as, coffee or green tea. But still, and the other foods are good. And then they have other nutritional benefit as well. I mean, all those food, such as natto, miso, broccoli, ginger, have so many other health benefits. So they're good to eat anyway.
Yes, I'm a big fan of miso. I generally drink that every day, and I kind of follow your rustic miso approach and have a lot of vegetables in my soup. So I was putting lentils and sweet potato and broccoli and cauliflower in my soup last night, which wouldn't be a typical miso soup, would it? So you can play around with your foods and make them, really interesting and tasty. So let's move on to the gut, and more specifically, the gut microbiome. And I have this memory when I went to Japan in the 90s, and I was living there. And one day at a supermarket, a Japanese friend asked me if I'd tried the probiotic bacteria drink, Yakult, and I said no. And then she started talking about healthy gut bacteria, and I was kind of confused. And my first reaction was, I don't want to drink it now because I just heard this word bacteria. And I think it's only been in the last decade or so that the West has caught on. It often seems that way. We're slow to some of these health benefits or understanding health. And now there are many books on this aspect of health. But in Japan, the gut has always been regarded as a primal organ in Japanese natural health. So would you like to touch on that?
Yeah. So first of all, fermented food is very big in Japan. We have miso, shoyu, which is soy sauce, natto, and tsukemono, which are like pickles, and there's so many fermented foods, and fermented food help your gut microbiome a lot. Therefore, our dietary culture is pretty much connected with the gut health. Yeah, and that has been around for many years. Yeah, and then as far as gut itself is concerned, we don't only value gut, many other organs. In fact, in the Oriental medicine, organs are very important. Gut is important, or stomach and liver, lung, bladder, and all those organs are quite important. Each organ represent the season or your emotion and so on. But also we have a word called hara in Japanese. Hara means your belly area. And hara is a the key for martial art or anything. When you practice karate, you feel the key energy from hara area. When you practice aikido, the same thing. So hara is very important in martial art. And hara is also important in healing art, such as shiatsu, acupressure. When you give shiatsu, you kind of use the key energy from hara to, give, shiatsu. Right. So hara, basically belly area, that's really close to the intestines. For some reason, we didn't have the kind of scientific knowledge of gut microbiome or anything like that. But somehow our ancestors valued hara, meant they are aware of the gut microbiome.
It's like a really good example of ancestral wisdom. They just discover it, I guess, through some process and then pass it on. And then decades later, or maybe even several hundred years later, we understand why with research and science. So that's fascinating. And sort of to go a little bit deeper, you noted a study by a Dr. Shoji Kondo, who was a medical professor at Tohoku University. And he spent 36 years traveling around Japan, visiting almost 1,000 villages and towns to investigate the diets of each community. So that's like a really long-term, large-scale study. What were his findings?
Yeah, so he discovered many long-lived villages and short-lived villages in Japan. Yeah, and then people in the long-lived villages were eating a lot of them are eating beans, vegetables, and seaweed. Yeah, they are all fiber-rich ingredients. And then people in the short-lived villages were not eating those, fiber-rich food, plus they were eating a lot of white rice.
Yeah. White rice is it's not very healthy, is it? It's just carbs, I guess.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Brown rice is much better in that sense because it contains fiber. Yeah. So fiber seems to be the key for health. And now fiber is considered to be very helpful for gut microbial diversity. Yeah. In fact, fermented food and fiber are the two key ingredients which support your gut health.
I see. So we're gaining a lot of very helpful knowledge. So fiber and fermented foods. And I mean, and this is something, at least fermented foods, Japanese eat daily. And unfortunately, most Japanese now eat white rice, highly processed white rice. So I guess for convenience, it's quicker to cook and all that sort of thing.
And also taste as well. I mean, a lot of people find white rice, more delicious than brown rice.
Yeah. Actually, you inspired me to try and cook brown rice for the family. And it didn't go well. My wife's like, I don't want to eat brown rice. And my son said, I'm not eating that. So it didn't go down well. But actually now I'm eating a lot of sweet potatoes. So
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, good.
that's really easy. I just get a sweet potato, put it in foil, and just put it on a low heat in the oven. And after about 2 hours, I have this delicious sweet potato to eat. So on the subject of food, you have and teach a methodology to find 30 different kinds of fiber and, to benefit the gut and I guess the gut microbiome. And yeah, you actually use, I guess we could call it a mnemonic device. So would you like to talk about this?
Yeah, right. So a doctor called Dr. Will Balsabich, an American doctor. Yeah, he is the author of Fiber Field. Yeah, and he talks about fiber is very important, but he also says diverse fiber is critical because there are so many different kinds of microbiome in the gut, and then each bacteria needs a different kind of fiber. So by providing more diverse fiber, you can help different kinds of bacteria in your gut. Yeah, and he says about we need about 30 different kinds of fiber a week, which is a lot because if we think of fiber, we think of vegetables. But, how many vegetables do you eat regularly? Yeah, maybe, I don't know, 10. Yeah, but 30 is quite difficult. Yeah, to find only from vegetables. Yeah, but there is this system in Japan called Mago wa Yasashii. Yeah, so ma means mame, which means beans, and go means sesame seed. Go means goma, which means sesame seed. So seeds, nuts, yeah, basically go. And then mago wa is wakame, which means seaweed. Yeah. Mago wa ya means vegetables, yasai, vegetables. Yeah. And sakana, fish. And shiitake, mushrooms, all kind of mushrooms. And potatoes, all kind of potatoes, including sweet potatoes, taros, and so on. So mago wa yasashi is basically you consume a lot of beans, a lot of nuts and seeds, a lot of seaweeds, fish, vegetables, mushrooms, and potatoes. Yeah, except fish, they all contain a lot of fiber. Yeah, and then you can easily find 30 different kind of fiber if you use Magwa Yasashi. Plus grains and fruit. If you add grains and fruit, then you can easily find 30 different kind of fiber.
It's interesting how this is actually just a phrase in Japanese meaning grandchildren are kind. And so I guess it serves as a way to remember to eat all these different types of food. And obviously very, it's almost a vegetarian diet with a little bit of fish.
Right.
Or almost a vegan diet because there's no dairy in this model, is there?
No dairy. But fish. The only thing which isn't vegan is fish. Yeah.
Awesome. So we've covered a diet, and now we can move on to exercise. And you write about exercise in the book. So yeah, do you want to touch on what Ikigai biohacking exercise is, and what you do, and why you engage these certain exercises or activities?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I told you that there are different approaches if you are tackling your spiritual health and planetary health as well, not only your physical health. Yeah. If you're just thinking about your physical health, which most people do, yeah, then you can think about, jogging is good, or yoga is good, or, a HIIT, which is a high intensity interval training, is good. In fact, a high intensity interval training is considered to be one of the best type of exercises for longevity. Yeah. Dr. David Sinclair, the Harvard researcher, talks about it too. He actually does recommend high intensity interval training to activate what he called a sirtuin, which is a longevity gene. Yeah. So in the Ikigai biohacking, we do think about those research too. So to do like a low intensity aerobic exercise and high intensity aerobic exercise are both critical to activate autophagy and sirtuin. Yeah. And we also need to do some muscle training. As you said, many old people damage their hip or they by falling and so on. So to prevent from falling or any kind of accident, you need muscle strength. Yeah. But that also means you need the flexibility of your body and the mobility. So you need to have the flexibility of not only your muscle, but your joint and balance. Yeah. You need to have a balanced body and so on. Yeah. And then I think about spiritual health and planetary health. Yeah. Are there certain exercises that can also benefit the planet? Yeah. So I recommend exercises outdoor, doing something in nature, which will connect you with a natural rhythm and natural kingdom, which will help you become aware of the environment and the planet Earth and everything. So, for example, hiking, mountain hiking is very good because you spend a lot of time in the mountain, in the forest. And we have a word called shinrin-yoku in Japanese, which means forest bathing. And so if you go to the mountains and you are surrounded by all the trees and you have a connection with the natural kingdom. And hiking is a great aerobic exercise too. So instead of maybe doing a treadmill or aero bike in the gym, maybe you can go outdoor and do your jogging or walking, Nordic walking or hiking. Yeah. And I also recommend Nordic walking, and I do Nordic walking because it helps our posture to be straight. Yeah, by using those two poses, it kind of helps your spine straight, so you can walk with a correct posture. While regular walking, sometimes if you don't pay attention to your posture, you kind of walk with a kind of a wrong posture. Yeah. And then posture is very critical to prevent from injuries.
I see.
Yeah. The reason why you fall or you lose balance is, first of all, you don't have the right posture. So the posture correction and then loosening your muscles and, loosening your joints and all those activities are important too.
It is important. And I've mentioned I'm really focusing on mobility. And I mean, just the idea that imagine if you fall over and that you couldn't get yourself up. It's pretty scary. That's what happened to my father. He fell over while his wife was out and he was on the floor for like 40 minutes and couldn't get up. And he'd been quite fit actually until his mid-60s. And then I think he stopped exercising and didn't eat. I think he ate what he thought was a reasonably healthy Western diet, but it probably wasn't that healthy. It certainly didn't have a lot of fermented foods and whatnot. And yeah, I remember getting a call, finding out he'd broken his hip and he couldn't get himself up, and he was actually fell on carpet. So it wasn't like he fell on concrete or something. So, and then I think about my father-in-law, and he can sit cross-legged and make pottery for hours on end, and he sits on tatami and can easily get up. So yeah, mobility and having these loose limbs, and I think walking a lot and being out in nature is a great alternative to this idea that you have to go to the gym and crush it. And, how much can you bench press or how much can you deadlift, being these markers of, strength or health. So I've really embraced this idea of mobility over strength now, and I do exercises to focus on that. And I do like
when you do the weightlifting type of exercise, I mean, they're okay too, but sometimes you kind of tense up your muscles too much, which because you need a flexibility of muscles too. So I kind of recommend body weight training. So I do HIIT, high intensity interval training, but I usually do body weight HIIT. Because as long as you are using only your body weight, you do not develop your muscle too much. Everything is proportionally. Yeah, but you might develop your muscle disproportionately to joints and other parts of your body if you use a very heavy weight. Yeah.
Yes.
So I kind of focusing on just enough strength, but not too much, but more work on loosening and stretching and posture correction and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I do too. A lot of bodyweight exercises. I use something called the Tabata protocol, and you actually
Tabata.
outline it in your book. And it's this 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 8 times. So less than 5 minutes. And you stretch and loosen up, and then you do something. Maybe you do as many squats as possible. So air squats in 20 seconds, stop, wait 10 seconds, and then start again. And that is intense, to do the last set. You're breathing hard. And I think if you do about 3 or 4 sets, that's a lot of exercise in under 20 minutes. So that's a really
Tabata
effective way.
Method is actually from Shiga Prefecture, I think, where it was made by Professor Tabata, who is a researcher at Ritsumeikan University, but they have a department called Sports Science, Health and Sports Science, but the department is in Kusatsu in Shiga. So I don't know whether this professor is in Shiga, but if the department it came from this department, then it is in Kusatsu. So that means it came from Shiga.
There you go. Yeah, and it's interesting because the claim is if you do this exercise, it's sort of the equivalent of doing moderate aerobic exercise over 40 minutes or something. So it's a great way to, do exercise if you're short on time. So I almost do that every day. So it's really a great way to exercise. Yeah. So on the theme of exercise, if we want to take it to maybe an extra level or an interesting level, you mention, I guess, a type of way. So do, the way, and I wasn't familiar with this word. So shugendo. So what is shugendo?
Yeah, shugendo is a Japanese spiritual practice. Yeah, so in Japan, we have 2 big kind of spiritual religions, if you like. One is Shintoism, and then one is Buddhism. Yeah, Buddhism and Shinto are the 2 main spiritual practices in Japan. Shugendo is a kind of a spirituality that connects Shintoism and Buddhism. So the Shugendo practitioners lived in the mountains, and they didn't really come to the village. They stayed in the mountains, but they, for somehow, were practicing both Shintoism and Buddhism. So they have a lot of mixture of the both. Yeah. And they are there are people called Yamabushi who are the Shugendo practitioners, and they are the forerunners of ninja. In fact, ninja were Yamabushi.
I see.
Ninja was kind of developed out of Yamabushi, and then so they all practiced in the mountains. Yeah.
This made me curious, Sachiaki. So I actually Googled Yamabushi and I saw these videos. And so they still exist in some form today. And people...
Yamabushi still do exist. Yeah. Ninja don't exist anymore, but Yamabushis do. Yeah.
And people kind of do these Yamabushi retreats, I guess, in a way. And they take a week off and they basically climb a mountain and they don't brush their teeth and they sort of abstain from doing certain things. And it's something there's some organization or some company trying to promote it to attract foreigners as well. Even there's I think there's a guy from New Zealand who's sort of become a Yamabushi, and he has his own YouTube channel on it. So I guess this could inspire us to maybe create a outdoor exercise routine where we go outside and if we're lucky enough to be near a mountain, maybe we climb it or go to a park, and we don't have to drive to a gym and pay hundreds of dollars every month. We can do these exercises outside and connect to nature. So it's all very fascinating, and we'll continue this discussion on biohacking in the next episode, and we'll discuss mental exercises, digital fasting, and biohacking with nature and bioharmonizing with your soul. So we've got that to look forward to in the next episode. So thank you for sharing all this wisdom and insight. And I highly recommend people buy your book. And so the title of the book is Ikigai Biohacking based on natural Japanese health. So
biohacking based on Japanese natural health.
Sorry, Japanese natural health. Excuse me. Okay.
No, it's okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for having me in this podcast. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking with you today.
Yeah, and I actually was thinking, I can't wait to go to Japan, hopefully this year or next year, and we'll obviously meet and probably meet on a weekend, and we can enjoy 3 meals and a bit of alcohol.
Yeah. And then we can go mountain hiking and all those things. Yeah, because in the Kinki region there are a lot of mountains where Shugendo flourished in the past. I mean, so now there's a few Yamabushi left, but it's not as big as in the past.
I see.
So all those mountains are, nobody's there now. But like 100 or 200 years ago, then all those Shugendo practitioners were living on those mountains. And there are many those mountains in Kinki region.
All right. Well, that's something to look forward to. So, thank you again, Sachiaki, and I'll be speaking to you soon for the second part of this episode.
Right. Yeah. See you next week.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ikigai Podcast. To learn more about Ikigai or to become a certified Ikigai Tribe coach, visit ikigaitribe.com.